So the title of this video is Hacks to Melt Stubborn Fat and Build Muscle Faster. Now, I don't really like the term hacks because what I'm about to describe to you are 4 strategies, things that you should be doing every single day to preserve your weight and ensure that you're not carrying excessive fat, which is metabolically active, it's inflammation producing. So the net effect of doing these things that I'm going to talk to you through is going to reduce your inflammation that we know creeps up, particularly as we age. And the other thing is going to be preserving muscle mass. So these strategies, these things, these routines, if you like, to do every single day, is going to be preserving that muscle mass that we know declines as we age. And it is essentially an organ. It creates hormones, and it can even protect your brain and certainly protect your metabolic health as well. So let's go for the first thing that I think people should remember every single day, these hacks or strategies or whatever you want to call them, and that's protein. Now, protein is sort of misunderstood. When you think of protein, you probably think meat, steak, chicken, fish, and whilst those are great sources of protein like eggs and all the rest of it, it doesn't necessarily equate to animal products. Animal products are fantastically accessible sources of these amino acids. So your protein, your building blocks are made of these amino acids. There's 20 of them strung together, and they create various 3D shapes as well. But it doesn't mean that you can't get it from beans and pulses and edamame. And I'll go through some of the best sources of plant-based protein as well. And I think the best strategy is to mix it all up. So I'm not vegetarian or vegan. I do get a collection of different proteins from different sources. But I think it is important to ensure that you're not over-consuming energy and saturated fats. That's quite easy to do if you just focus your protein consumption from animal fats. But what are proteins for? So protein, most people think protein is for muscle, is getting you big and strong and putting muscle in your legs. And whilst that's true, 25% or so of the protein that you consume goes to your muscles. The rest of it goes to enzymes and hormones and building the structures like bones in your body. It is a fantastically important, critical molecule, biomolecule, that we need to ensure that we are consuming. And your whole body is geared towards consuming enough. When you consume enough protein, that we'll talk about in a second, your body senses the nutrients that you've consumed, and a whole bunch of cascade of actions occur that will protect your muscle mass and will protect your health as well. So when we look at protein in terms of the literature, there are several long-term clinical trials of around 6 to 12 months that show that compared to other diets, participants who are given high amounts of protein, and I'll talk about what high is and low is, but high protein diets tend to lose body weight and fat mass more easily than those who are on a lower protein diet, even when the calories, so the energy from the food that they're consuming, is kept the same. They show less weight regain as well. So that's a really important point, because people who go on diets tend to regain that weight, and they'll regain more as well. So you tend to see this yo-yoing effect. And actually, what people might expect is the yo-yoing just going up and down. It's yo-yoing upwards. So you have this general trend of people who go on these crash diets, and then they regain the weight, and they crash diet, and they regain the weight, and you're actually seeing a trajectory going upwards, which is obviously not a good thing. So ensuring that you're on a diet, whatever that diet that might be, that is also ensuring that you're not putting on excessive weight after that diet is over is super, super important. And they also, people who are on these high protein diets, in the studies that range between 6 and 12 months, show improved body composition. So they decrease their fat mass whilst preserving fat-free mass, which is essentially your muscle mass as well. So there is a lot of evidence behind having adequate amounts of protein in your diet at each mealtime, whether that's 2 or 3 times a day, ensuring that you're getting the total amount of protein, and those improvements in muscle, in fat, and ensuring that you're not getting weight regain as well. Why is this happening? Well, these hormones include CCK and PYY. These are all hormones that signal to your brain, you know what, I've had enough food. So overall, you don't consume as many calories. And talking about calories, there's also something called the thermic effect of food. So when you consume protein, let's say you consume 100 calories of protein, just for argument's sake, which probably wouldn't be that much chicken or much steak or many edamame beans, you actually will use a significant proportion of those calories to actually break down the protein structures themselves. Around 20 to 30% of the calories that you consume from protein are used to break down the protein molecules, because proteins, like I alluded to earlier, these big structures with all these amino acids, and it takes a lot of energy from your body to break down those structures into their corresponding amino parts and then repackage them together, that your body does or your liver does. And used around the body. So that process is actually quite energy intensive, which means that even if you consume a certain amount of calories of protein, you're not going to be absorbing all those calories of protein, because you're using some of those calories to burn off the protein that you've consumed. I hope that makes sense. And remember, you can't store protein, so you need to consume protein every single day. If you don't have enough protein, what happens is your body will start switching to the only store of protein it has, which is muscle. And so your body is very clever in that it will start breaking down those big macro structures of muscle to repurpose those into the enzymes and hormones that it requires for the activities of daily survival. So you need to make sure that you're consuming enough protein. We can store glucose in the form of glycogen. We can store fat in fatty tissues. We store fat in muscle and liver, and obviously subcutaneous fat, visceral fat. You can't store protein, and so, which is why you need to be consuming it every single day as well. And remember, right at the start of this, I talked to you about the importance of plant-based proteins as well as animal-based proteins. And there is some evidence. There was a BMJ study that looked at high protein diets for longevity and healthier aging. So especially if you get those proteins from plants, you appear to have a better position in terms of longevity, healthier aging state. So omnivores like myself, for example, are in a great position because we can access some of those really readily available amino acids in the form of animal-based proteins, but we can also enjoy some of the other plant-based proteins, the tempeh, edamame, soy-based proteins that I absolutely love, that will also give you those added benefits of those phytonutrients and the amounts of fiber, whilst also giving you the protein that's required for healthy aging as well. So these are really, really good things to lean into. How much protein should you be consuming every single day? That is the sort of the $1 million question. You want to be consuming 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight as a minimum. That is my opinion. It is not reflected in the recommended daily allowances in the UK and the US right now, because those are based on essentially protein requirements for a minimum protein requirement to prevent deficiency. There is some argument as to what studies those were used to base that recommendation on. There were nitrogen balance studies done in the 80s, done on a healthy male population, not reflective of the different protein requirements at different ages, and obviously gender differences as well. There is a suggestion in the literature that a higher amount of protein per day is optimal, and it isn't associated with negative effects as long as you're not over-consuming saturated fat and energy from the higher protein concentration. So if you're having 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of ideal body weight per day, that is what is recommended. So if you are 80 kilograms, what that requires is you to have around, and do some quick math here, 95 to 100 grams of protein per day. Now, people who are exercising, people who are postmenopausal or an older cohort might benefit from a higher amount of protein of 1.6 up to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight every single day. And the reason why is because as you age, you tend to absorb less protein. There is a suggestion that you require a lot more because your body it takes a little bit longer to break down those proteins. Your microbes are completely different, so the population of gut microbes declines and the variety and diversity declines as you age. So that might be having an impact on how easily and readily you can access those amino acids from food. So there are lots of reasons as to why a higher amount, again, being cognizant of not over-consuming food in the form of calories and in over-consuming things like saturated fat. that might be beneficial for healthy aging as well. So these are things that can preserve muscle mass, can prevent weight gain, and even encourage weight loss as well. Remember that calculation that you can actually do at the doctor's kitchen. I'll put the link for the protein calculator down in the caption. Is done on ideal body weight. So if you put in your body weight and stuff, you flick that down in the caption below, will not only show you what your ideal protein consumption is per day, we'll also suggest some recipes for you as well that you can access on the doctorskitchen.com and the Doctor's Kitchen app as well. My favorite way to get proteins are lean meats. So chicken and fish are luxury items for me. I tend to have my protein from salmon and sardines, even mackerel, anchovies. Those are sort of my preferred sources. But I definitely get a ton from things like hemp seeds, which are very high in protein, shelled hemp seeds, that is. I get it from almonds, peanuts. You can certainly get it from pulses and beans. However, the concentration of carbohydrates and fiber to protein is a bit out of whack. So most beans have less than 10 grams of protein per 100 grams of product. So you'd have to consume quite a bit of food to actually get your required amino acids for the day, which is why the best strategy is to vary it up and ensuring that you're having some readily accessible proteins. Tempeh and tofu are great sources. They're low calorie and they have good amounts of protein, around 20 to 25 grams of protein per 100 grams of product as well. So very easy to get your protein requirements if you are vegan or vegetarian. I would also suggest that protein supplements, particularly for those who are exercising, so twice a week resistance and a couple of days of cardio. If you're in that sort of category, you definitely need to be consuming 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein, because there are some benefits on muscle protein synthesis, which is this process of building muscle, but also ensuring that your muscle is conditioned and it is healthy muscle as well. So those are the ways that I would suggest thinking about protein. The other thing is the distribution of protein throughout the whole day. So there is a suggestion in the literature that as long as you're having enough protein in 24 hours, it's totally fine. So if you're having 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day, if you have enough protein for your requirements in that 24-hour period, you're good. But there potentially is some benefits of ensuring that you're having nicely spaced up protein across a 24-hour period as well. So if you're starting with breakfast protein, so getting 25, 30 grams of breakfast protein, 25, 30 grams of lunch protein, etc. for dinner, that way you're going to ensure that you're going to be satiated. You're not going to be snacking in the middle of the day. That's probably the easiest way or the simplest explanation for what we see in terms of benefits to the individual in terms of weight loss as well. You're not going to be over consuming. So protein is super important. Ensure that you're getting enough protein. Do your protein calculation down below in the little link there that we've got for you guys. It's complete for free. We won't ask you for your email or anything like that. And these are all associated with benefits to healthier aging, building muscle as you age, and ensuring that you're not putting on weight, and actually that you're losing fat, and ensuring that you're not going to be gaining a lot of weight as well. The second thing, second strategy, second hack for melting fat and improving your muscle mass. I hate the word hack. It's just a strategy. It's a very, very simple strategy, and that is an earlier dinner. So there is research that intermittent fasting can lead to around 3 to 8% weight loss over anywhere between 3 to 24 weeks. This is a sort of collection of different studies that we have available to us. And a significant proportion of that weight loss is actually coming from fat. And that's exactly what we want from weight loss. We don't want the weight loss coming from bone or muscle. We want it coming from the excess fat that we all carry. And this is why I think intermittent fasting is useful. But intermittent fasting is a very vague term. It can refer to everything from 5-2 strategies, where you eat normally for 5 days and then you have a very, very low calorie consumption for 2 days. It can refer to alternate day water fasting. It can refer to time restricted feeding. And when I talk about intermittent fasting, I'm really just talking about the window of time that you use to consume all of your calories. So no change in the number of calories that you consume in a 24-hour period, just when you choose to consume said calories. So this is more formerly known as time restricted eating or time restricted feeding. And there is a suggestion that there are some funky things that occur when you just restrict the time of when you eat. It upregulates autophagy, this process of cell cleanup and cell recycling. It gives the gut a rest. It changes a hormonal milieu. The very simple explanation is that you eat less. So if you're eating between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., it gives you less opportunity to overconsume in the evenings when you're just sat in front of the TV and you're sort of eating out of boredom and you've got some chips or cookies or marshmallows or chocolate or whatever you're eating in the evening. It gives you less opportunity if you're going to be strict with yourself and say 6 p.m. I'm going to have my dinner, I'm going to brush my teeth. So if I do sneak a little snack in, I have to brush my teeth and stuff as a whole thing. That's a nice little blocker for me. It's a strategy that I personally use. And that essentially means that you're not going to be eating in the evenings. So it's a very easy, simple routine or hack or strategy that will prevent overconsumption of calories, that will lead to increased weight and can also be at the detriment of your muscle health as well. The one thing that I would say is that the downside of a restricted time window is that you may not get enough time to eat enough protein. And as we've just discussed, protein is super important from the perspective of muscle health and losing fat. So try and ensure that you're getting enough protein within that time window, whether it's 2 or 3 meals, and try an earlier dinner. An earlier dinner is a really, really simple strategy, but be flexible. There are certain days where I know that I'm going to be eating out or I'm enjoying a meal with friends at a restaurant. Be flexible with yourself. It's not a rigid rule. It's just a general guide. And there is some research that suggests that it can lead to weight loss, and majority of that weight loss coming from MAT. So melting body fat, if you like, even though that is a complete hyperbole. So that's the second strategy. The third strategy, just a quick one. If you want to take your health to the next level, I highly recommend you check out the Doctor's Kitchen app. It gives you hundreds of recipes that you can tailor according to your health goals, whether that's inflammation, menopause, improving your brain, increasing your heart health. There are tons of recipes that you can filter according to your dietaries and allergens as well. Click on the link down below and check out the Doctor's Kitchen app. Back to the podcast. Increasing fiber. It's something that I think gets lost in the conversation in high protein circles. And fiber is still the most important nutrient in my eyes because it is key, it is gateway to improving your gut microbes. These microbes that include fungi and nematodes and viruses, and as well as bacteria. There's a whole ecosystem of microbes in and around our body, but largely concentrated in the large intestine. And having enough fiber has an association with a ton of different benefits. In a study that was published in Nature, where calorie intake was controlled across 2 diets, but dietary fiber was increased, this diet was called the microbiome supporting diet. Participants absorbed fewer calories. So you have a diet that is high in fiber, you're actually going to have less calories from that diet. If you have less calories from that diet, your fat's going to melt off. You're not going to be consuming enough calories. That means that your fat is going to reduce. You're going to be burning up a lot of that fat, and it will improve your gut microbes' ability to absorb nutrients from the whole largely plant-based foods that you can be consuming, hopefully anyway. It also keeps you fuller for longer. So when you consume these different types of fibers, what you're also producing as a byproduct is natural GLP-1. So there are certain microbes that are in the lining of your digestive tract around the mucin layer, which lines your gut lining. And these will create normal or natural GLP-1, which is the hormone that signals to your brain that you are full and that you don't need any more food. And that again will reduce the amount of calories that you want to consume, because you will feel satiated and you won't consume as much. And that ultimately is the way in which you will melt stubborn fat and improve your general metabolic health as well. So it will keep you fuller for longer. It will also improve your cholesterol metabolism as well. So this is actually another important side sort of benefit of ensuring that you're having enough fiber in your diet. It will improve your heart health. And ultimately, if you want to melt fat and you want to preserve your muscle, you also want to be looking after your heart. You also want to be looking after your brain, and all these things are interlinked. So having enough fiber in your diet will ensure that your cholesterol isn't too high. And we know that ensuring that you have good levels of cholesterol, i.e. not too high, will improve your cardiovascular health as well. Another side product of having enough fiber in your diet is making sure that your glucose levels aren't spiking and your insulin is nice and sensitive as well. Your cells remain sensitive to insulin. So when you're having lots of fiber, it reduces gastric emptying, it slows the sugar level rising in your bloodstream, and that means that you're not going to have these big peaks and troughs of sugar going up and down that leads to high insulin spikes that can have an anabolic effect as well. So again, these are all things that will improve your metabolic health. My sort of suggestion of getting more fiber into your diet, think about BBGs, beans, berries, greens, and seeds every single day in your diet. So you want to get a handful of beans, a handful of berries, fresh or frozen, getting some seeds or nuts into your diet. So half a handful of walnuts, half a handful of almonds, half a handful of peanuts, making sure that they're roasted or raw and unsalted. These are the best sort of nutrients to get into your diet, and making sure you're getting a portion of greens in there as well. Not only do these all have fiber, but they also have these unique plant compounds that are anti-inflammatory, and them themselves can be interesting in terms of how they can reduce fat. They can burn fat. They can encourage you to start using up those fats that you have in excess storage and melting fat, if you like. So there are mechanisms behind just simply transitioning from an ultra-processed diet or a heavily processed diet to an unprocessed diet. These are all things that can potentially help speed up your metabolism too. So the fourth hack or strategy to melt body fat and preserve your muscle mass is simply getting an idea of what your caloric burn is. Now, this is something that I think is sort of frowned upon in wellness circles because calorie counting can be very inaccurate, and I'll go through the reasons as to why that is the case and for a lot of people. But getting an idea of how much you are burning every single day and ensuring that you're doing a slight deficit, not a massive deficit, a very slight deficit, or you're at least maintaining that calorie calculation and ensuring you're getting your food from whole sources. Because if you're having your whole sources, food from whole sources, you're getting a higher amount of protein, you're going to be burning a lot more calories than that calculated amount. So you're going to be in a very slight calorie deficit anyway. This is the surefire way in which you will burn more fat and you can preserve your muscle as long as you're having enough protein as well. So there is no doubt whatsoever in the literature that this is the most effective way of ensuring that you are melting your body fat. Few caveats though. So the way I do my caloric calculation is by going to a lab and getting a resting metabolic rate. You lie down for about 20 minutes, they put a mask on you, they figure out how much you're burning in a typical 24-hour period and where those nutrients should be coming from to maintain that calorie amount. It's a very simple thing to do. It's very cheap. You can probably do it for less than $100. However, it is a bit time consuming. There are very simple figures that you can get a ballpark figure of what your caloric burn is likely to be in a 24-hour period by just going to calculator, calculator.net. We'll link in the show notes below. And it will give you a ballpark figure. It won't be 100% accurate, but it will give you a ballpark figure so you understand how much you should be consuming for your needs. Now, if you were simply to eat the same amount of calories that you require from food every single day, but ensuring that is unprocessed food, so whole fruits and vegetables, whole beans, lean meats, chicken, steak, whatever it might be, and you just maintain that calorie amount, you will most likely be in a calorie deficit, because when you're consuming from whole foods, it takes that little bit more calories in terms of in the energy from your body to break down those whole foods, break down that food matrix, break down those proteins, that you're going to be in a very slight calorie deficit anyway. And that calorie deficit is unequivocally evidence-based to reduce your fat and ensuring, as long as you're having enough protein, ensuring that your muscles are nice and supported as well. So you will build your muscle, particularly as you age. That is there is no doubt on that, and there is no sort of debate on that being the case. Where there is debate is how we calculate calories, and there is a lot of inaccuracy, unfortunately. So first off, your basal metabolic rate will change depending on what state you're in. So whether you're in over-consuming nutrients or you're under-consuming nutrients. If you under-consume nutrients, your basal metabolic rate will slow, and that way your caloric needs will change. Your caloric needs will go down as well, which is why you see a lot of people plateau on a weight loss diet. And then when they start consuming even the same amount of calories at the start of that diet, they will start to see the weight go up, because the amount of calories that you are burning every single day has changed. It's gone down. And so if you consume the same amount, then you're going to be in a calorie surplus, which means you'll put on weight as well. So this is the trap that a lot of people find themselves in with these low calorie diets that I'm not a fan of. Calories themselves can be very inaccurate. So there is a degree of inaccuracy that you'll find on packaged foods that the suppliers or the manufacturers are allowed to have, because of how hard it is to calculate the calories in food when you're combining it and you're doing different things like mulching it together, processing it, you're adding additives. There's a whole bunch of things that go into food manufacturing, which means that the calories you're consuming are not always going to be accurate. Also, how your body uniquely absorbs those calories is going to be very, very different as well. But giving you a general idea of how much you are consuming, I think, is a good strategy. And ensuring that you're not over-consuming and you're having all those calories from unprocessed foods is the easiest way to ensure that you're not going to be over-consuming food. And that way, you will melt your fat. And as long as you're having enough protein, using the calculation that we talked about right at the start of this video, then you will ensure that you are building muscle as well. So you're going to be having more fat-free mass, i.e. high muscle mass, and melting the fat, if you like. So that's it. Those are the strategies or routines that I would recommend for everyone. Ensuring you're getting enough protein, ensuring that you're having enough fiber, making sure that you are having an earlier dinner, you're not consuming outside of those general windows. So I generally say like a 10-hour window, 10 to 12-hour window is optimum. And then you're getting an idea of what your caloric burn is that is unique to you, that you can base your meals around. These are the best strategies to making sure that you're not going to be over-consuming that can lead to weight gain. And these are the strategies that everyone needs to know if they're interested in reducing fat and ensuring that you're building muscle. Protein is having a moment where everyone wants to have more and more protein in their diet. I think protein is important, but these are the healthiest types of proteins that I think you should be consuming, as well as the unhealthiest types of protein that you should be avoiding. Check it out right there.